Got back a little late, so we ended up backing up our Sunday schedule a little bit for those guys. We brought them in to lift and run. We met as a team. Big thing we wanted to do is, and I've always liked this as a coach, as an assistant coach my whole career, I like to put the previous game to bed on Sunday. So when we get back here on Monday, we can start the next opponent, get our minds focused for the next week. We all know the importance of this week, the Commonwealth Cup game, what it means to our program. The cup is in our possession, and we owe it to our seniors to try to do our very best to go out and win this game. We still have a chance to extend our season. We understand that that also coincides with a victory. The only way to get a bowl game is to get a victory this weekend. So with that, we'll open up the questions.
Yeah, JC, in terms of the quarterback position, is Braxton going to get the start? Are you going to plan to rotate? I mean, what is the plan with quarterback, at least starting-wise for Saturday?
We're going to decide whatever gives us the best chance to win. Like we did last week, both Braxton and Connor did a lot of good things in the game, and Corn and the offensive guys will determine that later in the week.
JC, it's been almost 2 decades since you've personally been part of this rivalry, involved with it on staff here. What's this mean for you to be back part of this, and any very fond memories from playing in this game?
The biggest memory, I think, would be just when I was here, the competitiveness of it. When I went 2-2 as a player, and it was a strange really scenario that I was actually 0-2 at home and won both games in Charlottesville. So that was my 4 years as a player. Yeah, and as an alumni, you always watch this game from afar, whether I was coaching at JMU or Marshall. I always made sure if I had a chance to watch this game, I certainly watched it, or I recorded it, I DVR'd it, whatever you want to say. I was constantly checking the score. This game's important. This game's important within our state, not just football-wise. It's important recruiting. It's important. It's important to a lot of people, and as it should be. It's a rivalry game, and every state, every state has a rivalry game, and this one's ours, and it's important.
We asked you after the game about the running backs, and kind of how they were limited in carries and use. Mm-hmm. Did you kind of seek out an explanation for that, and how involved were you kind of Sunday in kind of looking at, your usual routine? I would guess is a lot different. Did you expand kind of, did you ask those questions? How did that kind of work in terms of reviewing the game? Because I'm sure you're not worried about that as an assistant line coach, as head coach. How'd you kind of approach that on Sunday?
Well, our running game has been really productive in the last month. The guys up front have been doing a good job of getting on blocks, and whoever's carried the ball has been doing a great job and been productive. And we just, as the game went on, we thought that was our best shot to win the game, and we'll do the same thing with UVA this week. As far as my schedule, yes, it was a little bit different how we went about viewing the game, how the coordinators, obviously I just asked Corn, what he thought, what his thoughts were, and he gave them to me, and we'll adjust whatever we need to do to try to be successful at UVA.
Hey, just to kind of piggyback on Andy's question about your memories, the other day you talked about the 95 Miami game. The 95 game against these guys was pretty memorable with Druck and Holmes and even Antonio Banks and Joe Geek and that whole thing. You and Cornell had a pretty good day that day. Can you speak to that one and what you remember about that one?
The biggest thing I remember about that game is the same thing that I tried to reiterate to any team or any guys I coach, is there comes a certain point in time that someone's got to stand up and say, you know what, I need to go do something. I personally need to go take it upon myself to make a play. And I remember the series. There was one series that me and Cornell really looked at each other and decided, hey, we got to take it, whatever we're doing, we got to turn it up a notch. And I don't remember directly, of course, but I think Cornell maybe went out and had a tackle for a loss. I had a sack, he had a sack, and they punted. It was something along those lines, and then that led to Druck getting out on the field, double move to Jermaine, and then of course them trying to come back and throwing the ball to AB with the trainer trying to trip him. I don't remember the man's name, but very memorable day. The fans rushed the field, and that was definitely a day I will never forget as a player.
And just about Connor, for him to rush for 132 the other night, that was 7th best rushing performance by a quarterback here all time. For him to be mentioned in the same breath as Vic or Randall, can you just maybe talk about what that means for the offense, just that aspect of the offense?
Well, I mean, anytime the quarterback can run the ball, speaking from a defensive point of view, it adds an extra hat. It puts the defense in a certain position where they got to choose to match the hat and lighten the coverage or try to get off of blocks and have multiple guys taking multiple gaps. I think what it did for us is Connor gave us a shot of energy. I thought he brought when you see a guy who transferred here, has bought into everything that we've asked him to do, has a pretty significant injury. I mean, here's a guy that he probably could have rode it out and not play the rest of the year, but instead he goes out and he attacks the rehab, gets his body right, gets him back to where he can perform, and our kids saw that. Our kids saw him go out, and every run he was trying to finish. He's a big, strong guy. The running game with him is different than the running game with Braxton. Braxton is they both bring different things to the table, and our offense seemed to be clicking with Connor, and we just rode the hot hand. But it says something about that kid's character and his makeup, how much he cares about his teammates, for him to come back and play just as hard as he did and run the ball as hard as he did on Saturday.
JC, you mentioned after the Miami game how difficult it was after the slow disappointing start. What's your message to the team this week, knowing that you can't really afford a slow start again like that?
Well, I said this to them yesterday, and I totally mean this, and I'll be as candid and forthright as I can. You grow up as a kid and as a man playing in sports, and people tell you there's no moral victories. Well, you know what? Maybe last week there is such a thing as a moral victory, because those kids, everything they went through, and they fought their butts off. Did we play well? No, and that's my fault. But the effort was there, the want-to was there, and those kids, the resiliency of this team. Any team could have packed it in, man, when it's 21-3, and they didn't. They did not. They fought their butts off. Did it go the way we want? No, but when it's an evenly matched game and you spot somebody 18 points, you're going to have a hard time. But they didn't flinch. That's what I asked them to do last week, and they didn't do that. We didn't lose. We ran out of time. And it's my job this week to make sure that we get off to a better start. Because if we get off to a better start last week, the game may have, it may not have. Miami's a good football team. But if we get off to a better start, then maybe we would have been on top. So that's the message this week is we need to try to limit distractions. I mean, you guys have no idea what the distractions were. And to deal with, I don't know if a college football team in America has had the distractions they had to deal with last week. And this week the message is we're going to try to limit those, and it's, there's no class. It's all ball. We're all ball this week. And take care of yourself physically. Today the message was get in the training room, get your body back as feeling as healthy as you can this late in the year. Finish academically, which I think is utmost importance. To have any chance to play in a bowl game, they need to finish academically. They need to finish academically so the seniors can graduate and put themselves in position to be successful. So that's what today was about. Today's going to be about the rehabbing their body and making sure they're on top of their academics. And then we come back tomorrow morning ready to go.
You guys have played some pretty good quarterbacks this season. What makes Brennan Armstrong stand out?
The quickness of his release, the decision making. He's a dual threat guy. He can run, and I know everybody knows he's obviously has been banged up here the last few weeks. But he's 6'2", 215, 220. I mean, he's a big, strong guy that you think he's not going to be as agile, as agile as he is. I mean, he makes guys miss for being as big as he is, and he can lower his shoulder if he chooses to and finish. And they do a good job of spreading the field, and he's been in that system. He's got confidence. He's got confidence as receivers, and he's hard to get to. He has a really quick release. I think he's a really good football player.
I know Trey had throat condition complicated by the hit on Saturday. Are you hopeful he'll be able to play this week at all?
Well, we'll continue to evaluate, and I'll just go ahead and nip it in the bud. We'll continue to evaluate him, Brock, and Lasitas, and those guys are all competitors, and they're going to do everything they can to play. But specifically to Trey's question, no, he did not, exacerbate his situation at all. We X-rayed him, and he didn't play purely out of precaution. We kept in constant contact with him as his drive back last night. He got back at 6 o'clock last night, and he's ready. He'll be, we'll see how the week, how the week goes. But he did not do more damage to himself. No.
When looking at the film, what was your takeaway in terms of, I know you said kind of their speed at receivers hurt you guys, but why the secondary struggled and allowed so many of those big plays? What was your kind of takeaway from kind of reviewing it with Justin and kind of your own take on watching the film?
Well, defense is you got 11 people out there doing their job to be successful in defense, and maybe I'm biased because I'm a defensive coach and have been all my life, but to me, on offense, if the backside receiver doesn't block great or the backside tackle falls down and they get the ball to the front side, they can still have successful play. They can still get 3 to 4 yards. If one person on defense is not living up to their end of the bargain, then the whole defense suffers. And that's kind of what I say. It's not just on the secondary. It's on the D-line. We didn't rush the passer very well. It's good rush is good coverage. Good coverage is good rush. And those things go hand in hand. So I would not sit here and put it on any one portion of the defense. We got to play better defensively on all 3 levels. We got to tackle better, and we got to tackle better when we're covering kicks. We gave them too many short fields, but that's things that we can eliminate this week.
Let's go out to Zoom, David Teal.
JC, your last 3 years in this rivalry, it was top 20 against top 20.
Mm-hmm.
And 95, it was Big East champion against ACC champion. Do you envision a time when this rivalry can get back to that level, and what would it take to get there?
I hope it does get back to that level. I think the high school football in this state can support both teams being really good, being top 25 teams. I think it's to everybody's, and it's more enjoyable if both teams are really good and they're both fighting for championships. And I think the things are different now because obviously we were in 2 different conferences back then, but now things are heightened with us both being in the ACC. But I can't speak for them, but I told you last week when I sat in front of you for the first time, I think we're close. There's not a doubt in my mind that this team has the capabilities of winning the championship next year, the following year. I don't know when, but it's there. These guys are close. It reminds me when we were kind of building things my freshman year here at Virginia Tech, and then and I talked to them a little bit about that and about how we struggled, and you have to weather the storm, and you got to improve, and you do that, and next thing you know, you instead of losing close games, you win those close games, and you look up and you're 9-3, you're 8-4, you're 10-2 because of it, and that's so we're close. I'm telling you, I will preach to the Hokie Nation that we are close, and these kids battle for them, and they practice hard, and they're good kids. They represent our university, and I don't think we're that far away from being back in championship conversations.
And then when you were talking with David earlier about Armstrong and the quick release and the decision making, how much does it help him to have receivers like Wicks and Keaton Thompson and the tight end Jelani Woods? What are your impressions of them?
Length, and more length. They're all big, tall, long guys. He has confidence in them. You know, he'll come out of his read and throw that thing back across the field and throw it up to those guys who are not only are they good athletes. I mean, they all can run. It's just you have to be the first thing that hits you on the screen when you watch their tape is just the length of those guys, and his ball placement's good. He trusts them, and he throws it up to them, and those guys seem to come down with it, you know, more times than not. So, number one thing would be the length.
Aaron,
Hey, JC, you mentioned in your opening remarks the opportunity here to extend your season. I think from the outside, we get the impression from what the players tell us that they really like being around each other. You know, they're having it's not one of those seasons where they're just so tired of it, they'd like it to be over. Do you get that sense too? And just being closer, being inside, I mean, how do you see that in terms of their desire to play another game?
I think there's a huge desire to play another game. I think these guys understand that, you know, every season is a season unto itself. No team is ever the same the following year. You know, whether it's a coach, a player, a trainer, a manager, anybody. I mean, it's never ever the same. You know, people. And I always tell, you know, being a D-line coach, I used to always say, look around, guys, because you only have so many opportunities with this group. You know, and it may be one or two people here, one or two people there, but it's you know, you're never the same as you were the year before. And the good thing about our guys is I'm telling you, we have good guys, man. We have guys that you can be proud of, and there's guys that get along, and you know, the camaraderie was developed in the summertime with the things we do and the system that Ben run during the summertime, and how he works them, and how he lifts them in certain groups, and the philosophy he has in the weight room is part of that chemistry and camaraderie that I think we have.
Mike Barber.
Hey, Coach. You know, as a player, I know the rivalry was intense for you and something you were passionate about. Has that faded over the years as you get to know their coaches? I know Coach Higgins talks highly of you guys. And has that faded, and does it ramp back up now that you're in this role?
As you get older, you mature, and you get to know these guys some of these guys on a professional level, Poindexter, Higgins, and sometimes you realize when you get older that they're very similar to you. They're just wearing different colors. But as a competitor, that doesn't mean on Saturday I didn't want to win the game and do my best to beat them. I'm sure this will be the third time I've coached in a game, being the two that I coached in as a GA, and even though I had relationships and had grown, friendly with a couple of those guys, come Saturday, I won't have much to say to them, to be honest with you.
What did qualifying for bowl games, and obviously the program was getting to a different point when you were playing, but what did that mean to your group, being a team that was going to have a postseason every year?
Well, just think about the extension of the practices. So when teams go to bowl games and you get an extra 15 practices, now it's not like the spring, it's not as grueling as camp, but you're able to develop young guys for 15 more practices. And if a young freshman who goes to 4 straight bowls, I mean, you do the math. I mean, that's, because I'm not doing the math, but you do the math. That's, I mean, just the development of those young players, the added practices, makes their football IQ, makes them better players. So you have a better product that comes back in the off season into the spring than you would if you don't go to bowl games. And to me, that's the biggest benefit.
It's 60 practices.
Thank you for 60. I knew you knew.
Thanks, Coach.
Paul.
Thanks, Barber. I was going to tell him that also. JC, you mentioned no classes this week for the kids. So how much different does their week look now? Do they have more downtime, or do they spend more time in the facility around you guys and the rest of the staff? Well,
I mean, we're still under the same hour rule, so I would hope they would spend a little extra time in film study on their own. But the only thing we're going to change as far as practice is we're going to back it up a little bit, allow those guys to sleep in some, but other than that, as far as football goes, our week is playing the same as it would be if they were in school, and hopefully being talked about those guys being a player-led team this week, that those guys take it upon themselves to bring some young guys, older guys into the facility and watch some extra film and get to know these guys as well as we can before Saturday.
Sure. And if you'll humor me for a second, I always like to ask the former players this question. So I'm going to ask you to take your coach hat off and put your former player hat on, if you could, for me. More dislike for Miami or UVA as a former player?
It's as a former player, it's all equal.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's fair.
I guess if I won't duck your question. As a player, I would have said UVA, but the difference would be that Miami, when I was a player, we had to beat Miami to win a championship.
Yeah.
So that would be the difference, the two.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate you answering that.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else in the room?
Your weekend, I'm curious, is there, I know the emotion of it and sort of, the circumstances, but was there anything you could take as the head coach that was different, like enjoyment-wise, like that you found, I don't know, or surprised you, or like, was it, obviously it was very different, so I'm just curious, like when you experienced the week and you kind of look back at it, like, was there something you liked about it? I mean, was there something like about the head coaching position, specifically having that?
Yeah.
Taking a negative, I understand that the circumstances were not obviously.
I'd say the positive, I had a better hotel room. I got to know, I got to be around the offensive guys a little bit more through walkthroughs. I got to sit in and listen to what the offense does a little bit because I wanted just to hear what went on. So that was, for me personally, that was a really cool thing, to not have to be pigeonholed, just dealing basically with just defense, to be in those meetings. The coordinators and us met before the game to be in that meeting and have everything, have all the information going to the game as opposed to just the information that I needed to do my job as a D-line coach. The thing I didn't like about it was I told the D-line and specifically the D-ends that I coach, I hated not being over with them making adjustments. Having to stand there and watch the game knowing that, we were struggling a little bit and I went over there a little bit, but I couldn't hang and talk about the adjustments with those guys as much as I really wanted to. And that, that bothered me. And so I thought that, if I could have been over there, maybe I could have helped them adjust a little bit better. Maybe I could have, that's what you think about. It's still, like I said last week, it's still always going to be about the kids. And I love our guys and so.
In terms of, since you're thrown into it, is there, you don't have an off-season to prepare or think about, when you're making your first call, like an onside kick, is there a different rush when you're making that call? In terms of like, as an assistant where you're just kind of seeing it unfold when you're the guy making it, and did it feel different to be making those kind of calls?
Oh, of course. I mean, I was nervous. And I'd walk down to the defense and I told them, if this doesn't work out, please bail me out, and because there's always a risk involved and when you do something like an onside kick or a trick play but sometimes, and I thought we needed a spark, and that's why we did it. We thought it was there. We had planned on doing it all week. At some point, we didn't know when. So we thought the time was right, and the guys did a good job executing it.
Thanks.
All right, one more, David Teal on Zoom.
JC, just following up on Mike's line of questioning there. What was the game management experience like? You've got a different feed on your headset. You're listening to different voices, timeouts and such. What was that experience like, and was it particularly challenging or different?
It was different, because I had never been in that situation before. But once again, I just listened to the coordinators. I listened to what Corn wanted. I had great feedback from the box at all times with those guys on offense, On defense, those guys were, it was just the communication was really easy. It didn't seem forced. Nobody panicked. There wasn't a lot of excessive chatter on either side of the headset, and those guys made it really easy for me. And they're really, other than saying yes for the onside kick, there really wasn't any major decisions I thought that really were all that difficult, to be honest with you. The way the flow of the game was going, the way it started, and then the way we got back into it, it just all seemed pretty natural. It didn't seem forced on my part or the coordinators.